receiving teachers, receiving students, and 7Es. Thank you. You may be seated. Okay, before we go on to our lesson topic for today, let's revise on what we have learned in our previous lesson. Who can still remember in your previous lesson what were some of the things that you went through with your previous teacher? 7Es and receiving students, you can give some of the points or important things that you learned in your previous lesson to your teacher. And 7Es, can we have some of those important things that you learned in your previous lesson, if we can still remember? Kaylan?
We learned about functions and algebra.
Very good. We learned about, or you learned about functions in algebra. What else? You others, what did you learn? Yes, and Shannon? To the receiving students, I hope you're giving your answers to your teacher.
A variable is a value that can change.
Okay. Any other thing that you learned? Okay, I understand you learned something on function machines. Can you still remember what a function machine is? 7Es, can we still remember what a function machine is? Okay, what is contained in a function machine? Who can still remember what are some of the things to be labeled when you are using a function machine? Lisa?
The input and the output.
The inputs and the output. What else is contained in a function machine? Do we only have those two? Input and output? You were drawing a lot of function machines and you were putting in labels to those function machines. What is contained in the main part of a function machine? Who can still remember? Emmanuel?
Rule.
Okay, a function rule is contained in the main part of a function machine. You have an input, the numbers that go into the main part of the function machine, and that is where the function rule comes in. You will be using the different or the 4 operations. There is a rule that is asking you to use with the number or the input going in, the result comes out as the output. So I hope you still remember the rule on how to use a function machine rule. Okay, we'll now move on to our lesson topic for today, the general term. We'll be learning a lot in the lesson topic for today, so I would need your full concentration so that you can follow through and get what we are trying to bring across to you. So receiving students and 7Es, I'd like you to pay full concentration. So our lesson topic now is on the screen, the general term. Okay, we have certain points to go through to see what is really a general term. Okay, looking up now on the PowerPoint, we have some main points for us to go through before you actually do the exercise. First point is, in a general term, we have to find rules for the n term. N stands for a pronumeral, or sorry, it's a pronumeral standing in for a number, especially in algebra. So the general rule here is the n term of some simple sequence. You have gone through simple sequence in your previous lesson with Miss Irima. I can still remember when you were drawing patterns, she was going through the leaves, sequence of leaves, and also the packet of biscuits. Can you still remember what you learned in that lesson? It's on simple sequence. And also in today's lesson, you'll be writing rules for the nth term in algebraic expressions. You'll be using letters and numbers to write rules. Also, you'll be trying to understand that linking a pattern number to the actual value, there is a name that is given to that, and it is called position to term rule. So as we go through the learning activities, you will fully understand what we mean by these points here. Okay, let's have a look at this learning activity. This learning activity now will help us try to understand what are those three main points. Okay, when you are talking about a general term, we are drawing diagrams. And having to draw diagrams, there are terms given for us to draw according to the number of terms. Like for example, first term, you are going to, if a pattern is given, you will draw a certain number of pictures to represent the term. So here is just an example. To predict the number of dots needed for the 123rd pattern, you could, in your book, instead of drawing 123 diagrams, there is a rule that we will be learning today in order to help you come up with the simplest way of having it in the different forms. So if you were asked to draw 123 pattern or 123rd pattern, you'll be drawing 123 diagrams that will occupy all pages of your books. So instead of doing that, there is a rule that you are going to be using or coming up with. There is a way to find a linking pattern with a number to go with the dots. So you just look at this one. It says you'll be drawing 123 diagrams, add 2 repetitively, find a way of linking the pattern number with the number of dots. You can see that the sequence grows by 2 each time. This is just information if you were given this type of information. Another sequence grows by 2 each time is the sequence of multiples of 2. We count by 1 up to 10. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sometimes we count by multiples of 2, which is here. Multiples of 2, we start from 2, 4, 6, 8. That can be called a pattern also. Multiples of 2, if you were asked to have it in a pattern, you can see that number of dots, 3, 5, 7, 9. Each time you go up by 2, you add 2. I can remember you learned this also with Miss Irima, simple sequence. So here you are climbing up by 2. Number of dots also increase by 2. From 3 to 5, when you add 2 to 3, you have 5. So multiples of 2, it's 2, 4, 6, 8. Number of dots, if you are drawing the diagram or the pattern, you have 3 dots, 5 dots. Each time you climb up by how many dots? 2. Add 2 meaning when you are drawing your diagrams, you are climbing up by 2 dots. You can also have your information in a table form. This table shows you how the pattern number, this is the first row showing the pattern or the term number, and the number of dots which are linked, how they are related. Okay, I'd like you to pay attention here, and we are going to go through the table together. Okay, when we say pattern or term number, this is what we mean. First term, second term, third term, and fourth term. If I were to ask you to draw a pattern using the dot or using a diagram which in the form of dots, for the first term, how many dots are you going to draw? 3. So which means first term you start with how many dots? 3 dots. It can be in any form, but so long as it will be in a pattern form. Second term, how many dots? 5. You are adding how many here? 2. Third term, 7. Fourth term, you have 9. Okay, multiples of 2 counts from 2, 4, 6, 8. So you have multiples of 2, you have multiples of 3, which is 3, 6, 9, 12, and so forth. Okay, here can be a rule on how to link the pattern number and the number of dots. Multiple 2 plus 1 is equal to 3. How this column here is related to the pattern or the term number, which gives you the number of dots. 2 plus 1 is equal to 3. 4 plus 1 is equals to 5. 6 plus 1 is equals to 7. Later we will find out where that 1 is coming from. 8 plus 1 is equals to 9. So the link here would be 1 times 2 plus 1 is equals to 3. 2 times 2 is equals to 4 plus 1 is equals to 5. 2 times 3 is equals to 6 plus 1, 7. 2 times 4, 8 plus 1, 9. This is how you can relate this, combining these 3 rows here to come up with the number of dots when you are drawing your patterns. Okay, we will still continue from here. The general rule is number of dots is equal to pattern number times 2 plus 1. 2 is when you are trying to add the number of dots to form a pattern. From our previous note, we have 3 dots to represent the first stem. 1 comes from one of those, or 1 represents the first dot. So I will just draw that on the whiteboard to see how it can be related. Okay, I'll be using these 3 magnets here. We have blue as 1, and each time we are adding, who can still remember, each time we are adding 2. The 2 green magnets here represents the 2 or multiples of 2. So this is now what we are referring to from that general rule. Number of, or pattern number, which is 1, 2, 3, or 4 plus or times the number of dots, which is 2, and that makes up the pattern, which is the first pattern, which is given as in the number of how many dots here? 3. So this is the first pattern. And the number of dots are? There are 3 dots. So this is the pattern that you have formed from using the dots. So you have number of dots is equals to number of pattern times 2 plus 1, which is 3. And it will increase depending on the number of dots or the number of pattern that you are asked. So for example, second pattern, how many dots will I have here? 5. So I have 1. Remember we started off with 3. So each time we are climbing up by multiples of 2. So which means I will have another, how many up here? 2. We are climbing up each time by 2. So now you have a total number of how many dots? 5. So these are some of the activities that you'll be doing in your lesson for today. Drawing patterns depending on how many terms that are given or asked of you to do or draw. Okay, for the fifth pattern or term, you would need 5 times 2 plus 1, and you should have how many dots? 11 dots. These are just examples that we are going through. We can check by drawing the diagrams like what we have done on the whiteboard. Okay, we started off with the 123rd pattern. So instead of us drawing 123 of this diagram, adding 2 each time, we are going to take up time, and also we might find papers to draw these 123 diagrams. So there is a way that you can follow, or a rule that you can use to come up with your answer. For the 123rd term, you would need, because the term is given, number of dots 123 times 2, which is 246 plus 1, the same one here. And you should have 247 diagram or dots as your last diagram that represents the 123rd term. So you can start with the first term, you start with 3, second term you go up by 5, and so forth. So instead of drawing that, you can use this simple rule here. Number of dots is equals to pattern number, or sometimes it's given as 123rd term, that's an example, times 2 plus 1. And then you can come up with the number of dots that you would need to draw in that particular pattern. For the n term, in algebraic expression, for the n term you would need n times 2 plus 1, which is the dot. N is now given as a pronumeral. Any term can be given. You just substitute into the letter n. Then you have your figures there, the multiple of 2 plus 1. And then you come up with your diagram. Therefore, you would write this expression as. In your previous lesson, you learned something on n times 2. When you are writing an expression, or when you are converting or multiplying algebraic expressions, we try to put these two together because we are multiplying. Multiplication is a different operation sign that we use from addition. Addition is different from multiplication. So when you are writing your algebraic expression, this can be written as, or n times 2 plus 1 can be written as 2n plus 1. What would be the operation sign that will come in between 2 and n? Okay, this is the multiplication sign here. So when we are multiplying algebraic expressions or writing it out, this is how you can write yours. So this is an example of how you can write an expression from this to this expression. You should have the same information in your student workbook also. Okay, we have one simple learning activity. I know what we have gone through is a bit difficult, but this learning activity would help us try to understand the main points that we have gone through. Okay, the instruction reads, use the steps and methods to complete this exercise. Okay, have a look at this diagram here. It says, for the following sequence, draw the next two patterns. First pattern. How many dots do I have in the first pattern? 5. Okay, very good. I have 5 dots. Have a look at the second pattern. How many dots do I have there? 8. I have the first pattern drawn there. Can you see? This 5 here comes from this. How many did I add to these 5 to come up with 8? Okay, I added 3 to come up with 8. So from 5 to 8, what would be the rule there? Going back n times 2 plus 1, but this one, what would be my rule? You add what from there? 3. Okay, you're not going to be writing the expression. This time you're going to draw another extra 2 patterns. Remember, we are climbing up by 3. I'd like you to draw the other 2 patterns, C, D. Remember, you start off with 5. You are climbing up by 3. Looking at this very carefully. How did I place this? Where can the other 3 come in? So you try to form your pattern. Do not draw them anyhow. There is a pattern that you are going to be forming there. So with your friend, this is just a learning activity. Quickly, you try to form your pattern from there. Remember, we are climbing up by 3. This is a learning activity. It's not from what is in your book. I know some of you are referring to the one in the book. This is learning activity, different from what we have from the PowerPoint. I'm just trying to get you to practice on how to draw your own pattern. If you have finished, I'd like you to raise your hand. It's just a learning activity that you and your friend can discuss and come up with the pattern. Okay, can we go through the correction to this pattern, to this learning activity? We'll have it on the whiteboard. See how you have drawn your patterns in your books with your friends. And then we are going to compare yours with the one we have on the PowerPoint, having in mind the pattern or the term goes up by 3. You start off the first pattern with, or the first term with 5 dots. Second term, you have 8 dots. Third term and fourth term, I'd like us to draw that on the whiteboard. So which group have finished that would like to draw their pattern or the answers on the whiteboard? You learn from your mistakes. To the receiving students, you can also try to draw your patterns on the blackboard. So can we have Shannon to come up and draw what you and your group have come up with? You can draw the first or the third term. Okay, Shannon is going to draw the third term. Diagrams representing the third term. You others check your answers. Okay, he started off with the first term, which is 5 dots. Okay, the third term, how many dots do we have there? How many dots? 11. 5 plus 3. We have the first term, which is 5. Second term, we added 3 to that, and we have 8, which is on the PowerPoint. He added another 3. And now the third term, you should have how many dots altogether? 11 dots. How about the fourth term? Who would like to do the fourth term for us? Okay, let's have Isaac. You others check your answers to see if you have the same diagram with the same pattern as to what we have on the whiteboard. Fourth pattern, how many dots do we have? Fourth pattern, how many dots do we have? 14. 11 plus 3 would be 14. Okay, let's check to see if we have the same diagrams like the ones we have on the PowerPoint. Okay, the next two patterns we have here, the third pattern, having in mind we are climbing up by 3 each time. So your pattern should look something like this. we have dots represented in white color, that is the first term, plus 3, that is the second term now, which is 8, plus another 3, 11. So that represents the third term. You can see there is a pattern there where the dots are lined up this way. Can you see that? And also this way. And that's how you can form your patterns. Let's have a look at the fourth term. We have 5 plus 3, 8. 8 plus 3, 11. 11 plus 3, 14. So you and your group should have come up with a pattern looking like what we have on the PowerPoint. We got to be very careful when we are trying to draw diagrams and also how we can form the pattern. Now we will go on to our exercise. You have gone through the learning activities. It says use the steps and methods to complete these exercises. 1A, for the following sequence. First term, which is 4. Second term, you have how many dots? 8. Third term, what would be the number of dots? Okay, you don't tell me, but I'd like you to add another 4 to your diagram. Remember, I have 4 in the center, and then I have another 2 up here, another 2. Where can these other 4 dots go to? I am climbing up by how many dots? 4. I'd like you to draw the next pattern. The same exercise is in your student workbook. Okay, it should be very easy. Put your hand up if you have finished. Okay, those who haven't finished, quickly I'd like you are to just follow the pattern that we have on the PowerPoint, and then you continue by climbing up, by adding another 4 dots. But be very careful where you are going to put those 4 dots. There is a pattern being formed there. Can we go through the answer now? There's only one pattern we are forming here. The third term. Can we have a girl this time to come up and show your diagram or what you have drawn in your book on the whiteboard? 7 is? Can we have a girl, student girl, to come up and do that for us? We had 2 boys so far. The receiving teacher, you can select a student to come up and show the working out to the next pattern that we are going to be going through now in our lesson as our exercise. Okay, can we have Agnes to come up and draw your pattern on the whiteboard? Draw it bigger like this one, big one. You others, check to see that you have the same diagram drawn in your books. Okay, put your hand up if you have the same diagram in your books. You have drawn the same diagram in your book. Okay, very good. Your diagram should look something like this, but making sure that the dots are drawn correctly, the same size, and also they are forming a pattern here. Okay, we will go through that together on the PowerPoint. Having in mind, we started off the first pattern, you should have how many dots? First term, how many dots? 4. Second term? 8. Third term? 12. Okay, let's check to see that we have 12 dots. Okay, the first 4. Then we have the next 4. It should look like this. And the last 4. And it should look like this. Do they look the same? Like, is it the same as Agnes' diagram? Yes. So students, if you do not have it correct like what we have it there, that means that you haven't drawn your dots correctly in order. You might have drawn your 4 in a different direction. Okay, there is more exercise for you to complete in your books. I'd like you to complete that for homework. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to ask. To the receiving students, you can also do the same. If you are still confused on how to work out or draw your different patterns, you can also ask your teacher for assistance. Okay, we will now go on to our summary points for today. Okay, summary point for today. Linking the pattern number to the actual value is called 7's. Come again loud and clear. Linking the pattern number to the actual value is called position to term rule. How you position your dots, that will help you form your rule, your term rule. Our key phrase for today, simple sequence. To the receiving teacher, our next lesson topic is on functions and rules. Materials needed, worksheets, A4 papers, rulers. And this would be lesson number 95. With that, 7's and receiving students, we have come to the end of our lesson for today. Thank you for your participation.